What's going on, everybody? Welcome on in the Vikings Now by Chat Sports. My name is Patrick Siepman. Took some PTO the last week, but now I'm feeling rested and ready to go with the preseason starting this Saturday. But coming up on today's show, we did get the news that Jordan Addison will be suspended for the first 3 games of the regular season. So we'll talk about some replacements and also just discuss if the Vikings should make a move to add another wide receiver. Now, I'll say this really quickly to start off today's show. I don't think the Vikings need to make any drastic moves following the suspension. I'm going to put some faith and some trust in the guys they have outside of Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. You spent a third-round pick on Ty Felton. You obviously, coaching staff loves Jalen Naylor, and even got a guy like Rondell Moore working in there. Lucky Jackson has looked really good in training camp, but still, with drops also being an issue and Jefferson dealing with that hamstring injury, I would not be shocked if Kwesi Adofo-Mensah decides to make a move for a wide receiver before the start of the season. But I do think the Vikings for the first 3 weeks should be okay without Addison. It's not like they have like the Ravens, Lions, Packers during the first 3 weeks. You get, the Bears, Falcons, and Bengals, 3 very winnable games for the Minnesota Vikings. I think they should walk into Chicago week 1 Monday Night Football and beat the Bears, even if, with or without Addison, and he won't be there, even week 2 against the Falcons. A little unfortunate. Jordan Addison actually torched that secondary last year, going for 133 yards and 3 touchdowns. And the Bengals defense, obviously not that good. So it's not a bad kind of spot of the schedule to lose Jordan Addison, but still, these should be some, very, very important games for the Vikings. So we'll talk about some replacements here in a second, but watch parties are back this Saturday. Make sure you guys are subscribed here to the channel. Vikings kick off at 3 p.m. Central Time. We'll be going live an hour before kickoff. J.J. McCarthy's going to play. I'm not sure how many other starters will play for the Vikings. I'm assuming they'll have majority of the starting offensive line, but we should get a good look at QB1, number 9, J.J. McCarthy. So hit that subscribe button today. And also, if you're going to tune in for the watch party, just give me a skull down below in the comment section. Now, I think the number 1 Jordan Addison replacement is not even a wide receiver on the roster. It's got to be T.J. Hockenson. And, TJ, last year, a down year for his standards. We all consider him a top 5 tight end in the National Football League. And he just wasn't the same guy that he was in years past. But now with him having a full offseason to just work on his game compared to last offseason when he was rehabbing from that torn ACL, this is the number 1 guy I'm looking to for a guy just to step up in the passing game. And, TJ, he's a tremendous talent. 28 years old, hitting that athletic prime, and he cooked the Bears last year in Chicago, so hopefully he can do it again on Monday night. But, start looking at this wide receiver room, and if you don't have Addison in there, Jalen Naylor actually did a very good job last year when Addison had to miss time with that ankle injury. Kevin O'Connell a couple weeks ago was talking about it, just really praising Speedy and, giving him credit to, pretty much saying he's a more versatile wide receiver than a lot of fans, think of him as just being a burner. But you even got Ty Felton working in. Rondell Moore, he'll get some good looks, and then also Lucky Jackson. But I think this is a pretty obvious take. I was debating even putting this in the show today, but how do you manage Addison not being there? You run the football. Like, this whole offseason for the Vikings, yes, it is about making J.J. McCarthy's life easier, but a big part of that is being able to run the football at a very high level, and it starts with the offensive line, it starts with the 2 running backs, and then also Kevin O'Connell. Vikings have not been a dominant rushing team under the Kevin O'Connell era. That has to change, especially for the first 3 weeks. And I'm just even thinking about that Bengals game. You're going against a high-powered, one of the best offenses in the league. If you don't have Jordan Addison, I don't love the idea of the Vikings getting a shootout with Cincinnati. So maybe you try to limit possessions, you try to run the ball a whole lot. If you can do that effectively, they should be okay without Addison missing time. But we can talk about the number 1 Jordan Addison replacement here. Fan favorite, Vikings legend, Minnesota legend. How about a little Adam Thielen? I've already seen people on Twitter hitting me up saying, "Oh, Patrick, should the Vikings go after Adam Thielen?" And I may be thinking with my heart over my head in terms of the Vikings trading for Adam Thielen, but I'm all in on this move. If the Vikings are going to bring in another wide receiver, it should be Adam Thielen. And really, that's mainly the only guy I would seriously consider. And maybe you ask yourself, well, why would the Panthers want to let go of Adam Thielen? They have a young quarterback. They want that solid veteran in that room. Well, that room in Carolina is looking pretty hefty. Like, they spent that 8th overall pick on Ted McMillan. They spent a first-round pick last year on Xavier Legette. They love Jalen Coker. They also brought in Hunter Renfrow. And you also have Jimmy Horn, the wide receiver out of Colorado, who apparently he's been looking amazing during training camp. So you can make an argument Thielen is probably wide receiver, as it stands right now, still probably wide receiver 3, but after a couple weeks, he could end up being wide receiver 6 on this roster. And, if the Vikings could just toss Carolina like a 5th, 6th round pick, maybe they eat majority of his contract, Vikings bring Adam Thielen back, I would be all in. And again, you may be asking yourself, is Adam Thielen cooked? Obviously we saw his play at the last year of him in Minnesota definitely take a hit, but he has still been amazing for Carolina. And this first year there in 2023, he still went over 100 receptions, went over 1,000 yards. It's being that reliable, space creator at the wide receiver spot. And even this past year, and only playing in 10 games, he was still pretty solid. 48 receptions, 615 yards, found the end zone 5 times. And, when Bryce Young really came on in the second half of the year, a big reason for that was Adam Thielen just getting open. So he still has it. And, let's just look at the room. If they didn't have Addison and you just replaced Adam Thielen in there, this is still a very, very good wide receiver room. And, obviously it's because of Justin Jefferson. Like, if we didn't have the top dog, the best wide receiver in the game, we're probably looking at these guys a little differently. Just because of the attention Jefferson's going to get, where Thielen would have an easier role. Jalen Naylor would have an easy role. Even a guy like Rondell Moore, Ty Felton, these guys are going to get easy opportunities where they just have to win one-on-one matchups, and they should be successful. But another reason why I would want them to bring back Adam Thielen is the Vikings wide receivers have struggled with drops throughout training camp, which I never thought I would say. Obviously, Keenan B. Cardell, I think he is the best wide receiver coach in the league. What he has done with a guy like Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs, Jefferson, Jordan Addison, all of these star wide receivers that have came through Minnesota, he has gotten the most out of them. So drops being an issue, especially with a guy like Jalen Naylor. Even Addison was having drop issues. TJ Hockenson was having drop issues so far at camp. So maybe just get a more reliable guy, which Adam Thielen is. I would definitely be all in on that move. But number 2 here, we're going to go Amari Cooper. Still a free agent, shockingly enough. I was actually debating Amari Cooper or Keenan Allen on this list, but obviously Keenan ended up going back to Los Angeles and signing with the Chargers. So we'll talk about Amari Cooper here. Now, drops have been an issue for Cooper, especially this last season. When he went to Buffalo in a wide receiver room that, was good, but it wasn't great by any means, he really couldn't see the field, especially in the playoffs. I was shocked that he wasn't out there getting, more snaps than he did. But I think Cooper would just be a nice low-risk veteran to add to the room. Like, Vikings could probably sign him on a 1-year, $3 million deal. He'll step in there, be that wide receiver 2, 3 when Addison is gone. And then, once Addison comes back, that's a hell of a wide receiver 3. And it's not a wide receiver 3 where it's like we completely ignore Jalen Naylor. Like, I could see the Vikings bringing Cooper in, and then once Addison comes back, we could see some games where Cooper doesn't play. So I would be in on this move. This would be, again, similar to Adam Thielen. It's a veteran, low risk. He knows, how to just play wide receiver in the NFL at a high level. So I got him at number 2. Now, some risky ones here. We're going to go Quinton Johnson, former first-round pick of the Los Angeles Chargers. Talk about drop issues. That is Quinton Johnson. Now, the Chargers did just sign Keenan Allen, so maybe they could be looking to move him. They obviously got Ladd McConkey. He's going to be their star wide receiver there in LA for the next 10+ seasons. That guy's an absolute stud. But obviously Quinton Johnson hasn't worked out for the Chargers, and he actually had a decent year if you just look at the raw numbers this past season, finding the end zone 8 times, going for over 700 yards. But again, drops are a major issue with this guy. If he would just shore that part of his game up, he could be one of the better wide receiver 3s, 2s in the National Football League. But if you can't catch the football, it's going to be tough for a coaching staff to trust you and to get you back out there on the football field. But I think this would be a Keenan B. Cardell experiment where, how we talk about Brian Flores when he wants to bring in, for example, a guy like Isaiah Rodgers. We'll trust in Flores, be like, hey, that's your guy. Even though he hasn't really, looked too good at previous organizations, we bring him in, and Flores can get the most out of him. I think the same could be said with any wide receiver coming to the Minnesota Vikings. And again, you're playing next to Justin Jefferson. Your life will be a lot easier. So even though he hasn't worked out in LA, I could see him coming to Minnesota Vikings and potentially having a little bounce back and maybe living up to that first-round hype he had coming out of TCU. But you guys make the call for me. Should the Vikings add another wide receiver? Give me a Y for yes. Give me an N for no. You guys let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. I'll make this the pinned comment on today's show. So curious to see what you guys have to say. Should they? I'm going to say no. But, again, if it's Adam Thielen, I would be absolutely thrilled for the Vikings to do so. So should they add another wide receiver? Y for yes, N for no. Now we'll get to 2 more names here in a second, but I got to tell you guys about a new product we have here at Vikings Down by Chat Sports, and that's Factor Form's Daily Greens. Now start your day right with Daily Greens by Factor Form, at factor75.com/VikingsChat to get 40% off plus free shipping on your first order. Now, I've tried green supplements in the past, and I swore I was never going to try them again until I pivoted and tried Factor Form's Daily Greens. Most of us dread drinking greens in the morning, but Factor Form changed the game. You actually crave your greens. And as a sister brand to Factor Meals, Factor Form was designed to work hand in hand with your meals, making better nutrition effortless. Daily Greens is a greens powder by Factor Form you look forward to drinking. Just one scoop delivers 100% of your daily nutrients, filling nutrient gaps, supporting whole body health, and helping you feel your best. With a refreshing, citrusy, clean, and smooth taste that's actually enjoyable to drink, mix a single serve pack in water, and you're good to go. Now, my favorite part about Daily Greens by Factor Form is that in a blind taste test, Daily Greens ranked number 1 in taste, texture, and aroma, beating out the biggest names in the industry. So start your day right with Daily Greens by Factor Form at factor75.com/VikingsChat to get 40% off plus free shipping on your first order. That's factor75.com/VikingsChat for 40% off plus free shipping. Hit that link in the comment section and description of today's show, factor75.com/VikingsChat. All right, let's hop back into it. Jordan Addison replacements. Now, obviously very disappointing that he had to get the full 3-game suspension, and he's also not going to appeal it. I thought maybe he was going to try to get it down to 2 games, but I will say very quickly here, I am happy for Jordan Addison that he is finally able to kind of put this to bed, because this was hanging over his head all last season. Obviously something that's not fun to deal with for him, but he can move past this, serve that 3-game suspension, and then he can hit the ground running for the rest of his NFL career. But number 4, we're going to go John Mechie III, Houston Texans wide receiver, former high draft pick, and just really hasn't had the opportunity there in Houston. Now, obviously they had, the likes of Nico Collins, I think one of the most slept-on wide receivers in the league, but also last year having Tank Dell in there, having Stephon Diggs, and, he still got bumped down the depth chart after what the Houston Texans did this offseason. They drafted Jaden Higgins in the 2nd round. They brought in Christian Kirk. They also brought in and drafted Jalen Noel. So you still have Xavier Hutchinson there as well. So I could see the Texans be looking to move John Mechie. We've heard his name in the latest trade rumors for the last couple of seasons as well. And, again, it's been an opportunity for Mechie. The raw numbers aren't going to blow you away. He's a big play threat. He's got some speed in his game. He can be very versatile. He's been fairly healthy throughout his NFL career, which is always great to see. But kind of my take on Mechie is he's just a very similar archetype of wide receiver to 3 guys we already have, and that being Ty Felton, Jalen Nailor, and Rondell Moore. I would just rather have the Vikings ride out with the young guys, because it's not like Mechie is coming in here and it's like, oh, we're looking at this wide receiver room completely differently without Addison. I'm probably looking at it the exact same, where I would just rather have Ty Felton get those reps. Jalen Nailor has already stepped in for Addison last season and looked pretty good, and Rondell Moore, I think he's just better than John Mechie at this point. So we'll see if the Vikings, try to swing a trade again. This could be one of those, 6th, 7th round swaps. And also the Vikings and Texans, I feel like they make trades every single year. So this would not shock me at all. But if I was making the call here, I'll just ride out with the 3 young wide receivers they have outside of Addison and Jefferson. Now, number 5, another free agent, a veteran, playoff legend, actually, Gabe Davis. Still a free agent. Listen, I was completely wrong about Gabe Davis. I thought he was going to be a stud after that game he had against the Kansas City Chiefs, but I would pass on him. Again, very similar to what I was saying about John Mechie. It's not like Gabe Davis is coming in here and changing life in this wide receiver room without Jordan Addison, but I will say on Gabe Davis, never forget his game versus the Kansas City Chiefs. I remember watching this game with actually a bunch of Bills fans that were my roommates in college. This was one of the greatest football games I ever watched. He was completely cooking the Chiefs secondary. I think he had like 4 touchdowns, over 200 yards, had 2 clutch touchdowns in that game as well, late in the 4th quarter. And I think that honestly, and I mean this in no slight of him, kind of made him a little bit overrated, because I remember people were talking about that year after where it's like, oh, Gabe Davis could be one of the best wide receiver 2s in the league next to Stephon Diggs. Obviously didn't end up working out. I think there's a reason he's not signed yet. So again, I understand the Vikings. The wide receiver room doesn't look as good without Jordan Addison in there, but put faith in Justin Jefferson, TJ Hockenson, and that run game to be able to manage his ship a little bit when Addison does have to miss those 3 games. But if you guys are going to bring in another wide receiver, who's it going to be? Name a wide receiver the Vikings should bring in. Drop that name down below in the comments section. And if they do bring in another wide receiver, we'll have a video for you guys ASAP. So hit that subscribe button on your way out. And also, we will be live 2 o'clock this Saturday. J.J. McCarthy playing some real football. As you guys know, I couldn't be more excited. A little nervous as well for this game, but we'll see you guys next time. As always, let's go Vikes.